And this is Dave Higginbotham interviewing Jody and John. And John and Jody, do you guys know that I'm recording you and we're going to possibly use this on our website?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So we've been talking here for a while. You guys have gone through the story, given me the highlights, but now we've got the recorder on. Let's just kind of start again when it started. We were talking about the straight well. Let's go the shallow well. When was that all an issue? What year are we talking there?
When did I move in?
2 years ago. You've owned a property.
This will be 3 years.
Yeah.
So it was 2 years ago then when we found out about the shallow well. It was in, I think, October of 2008, I think. I'm pretty
That
positive.
would be right at 2 years then.
Yeah.
I mean, tell us why we didn't get shallow wells back here, because there's none in the backyard now.
They're not there because when we found out about it, we knew that it was a slip zone. So we went to the township meetings, got as much information as we could, went down, presented our case, called the DEP, called CNX Gas, complained to everybody because we were afraid that our whole houses, everyone up here on the ridge, our homes were going to slide down, or our septic systems were going to also go, because all of our septic systems are in the back.
Yeah, I mean, this hillside back here, you can see, what, maybe 50 yards, 60 yards, well, 100 yards past behind your house is where the slope
Right.
starts to not be gentle anymore.
Right.
No, it's
Right.
well, it slipped from down there. There's a house directly down below mine, which is down below Jody's here, the brick house. Directly down over the hill from mine is another home that was not supposed to be built there years ago, but somehow slipped underneath the radar and got built. And after it was built, they had problems with it because the ground was moving and it was pushing the house off the foundation.
Okay.
And they had the DER out here then. This was years ago. It wasn't the DEP, it was the DER. They come out here and they said that you definitely have movement. And he said the only thing we can tell you to do is to plant trees and hope that it finds a equal balance and stops. So the fellow that lived down there, Mr. Orban, he asked me, he says, come down, and he said, look at this. So I went down, and he had a 4-foot piece of plyboard, a 4-foot square piece of plyboard there, and I took the plyboard and set it up against the back wall of his house. The top was against the foundation, and the bottom was approximately 1.5 to 2 feet away from the 4x4 piece of plyboard.
Right.
So the house had moved that much.
Right. In how much, like what, 20 years?
No, in probably 2 years.
Oh, wow. So you've been watching this ground move for a long time. Right.
Well, it's stopped now. They took it, it was so bad that the tax assessor come out and they took that house off of the tax roll for a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just put back on, I'd say, within the last 8 to 10 years. But there was a period of time where the taxes were taken off of the property because they figured there was no value there.
Mm-hmm. So you stopped the shallow wells in your backyard now. What's our concern now?
Well, our concern now are the charges that they are going to set off to see how deep the Marcellus Shale is.
What charges, Jody? The ones that are buried back there right now?
Yeah, the charges are buried about 30 feet underground.
The dynamite.
The dynamite. They call them charges. And how many are there, John, on your map? How many charges?
34 of them.
4 pounds times 34 holes. John tells me is 123 pounds of dynamite that is currently surrounding us.
Already buried in the
That's
ground
true.
since July. It's been
And it has not been detonated yet.
And the closest is how far from the house?
Probably over here in the field directly behind us, house across the street. I'm going to say 300 yards.
Yeah, I was thinking about 1,000 feet.
About 300 yards.
Yeah.
Because the guy from the company told us the closest one was that one clear down at the bottom of the hill.
Well,
and he said that was 700 feet. Remember?
So there you go, the closest.
Yeah,
is
okay,
yeah,
well,
back here it did look a little
down
closer.
here on this bottom, yeah.
So
okay.
obviously your concern is that the hillside's going to slide away when they start blowing up the ground
Right,
underneath
because
or around it.
right, and they told us the two gentlemen we saw in the field directly behind my house, the field that the slip zone is in. They told us that all they were going to do was lay down the wire that will read the sound waves.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, if you are not within 100 feet of that initial blast zone where the charge is, you will not feel any vibration. But I don't believe that, because then they would not be putting wire this 500 or 700 feet away to feel that sound wave. That just doesn't even remotely make sense. So we're very concerned that our house and the septic system or our property is going to get damaged, whether it happens immediately or if it happens in the spring when there's a lot of rain and it
And
takes
the snow
it.
melt.
Right.
Yeah, because South Franklin Township is notorious for being one of the poorest geologically situated areas in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What we have is a top layer of topsoil, and directly underneath the topsoil is a clay vein.
Mm-hmm.
And when it rains, the water goes down, hits the clay vein, cannot perpetrate the clay vein, and lays there, and the clay gets slippery, and the top goes. If you're on a steep incline,
Yeah.
this is
Right.
where you start to get the movement.
Like, you remember when they were building the Walmart on 65?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a mess.
Yeah.
That's been over a year now. And they're still working on that.
It's still moving.
Yeah, they're still
won't-
working.
They
on
just got to keep putting it back up top. So, what's going on as far as your dealings with the gas companies on a personal basis? When you go to them and say, "I'm concerned," how are you met?
Well, when we first confronted CNX Gas, maybe you should tell that part. They never gave anyone permission to be on this property.
Yeah, they said I called.
Who was out here?
I called the Consul Cole. I called to their office out in Pleasant Grove.
Is this when you guys found them laying wire?
No,
no.
they were going to, but we didn't.
Right, and
they
we
didn't
called
lay it.
Yeah.
right after we saw that they were laying wire. We got their company name, and then John called CNX Gas to
In
find.
Texas.
Well, I called Consul Cole to the administration building out in Pleasant Grove.
Oh, okay.
And I got a hold of this fellow out here. He's the land acquisition man.
Landman.
The land acquisition man.
He's the land.
And he said that he'd have to look at the maps, because I was trying to tell him exactly where this situation was. And I thought I was really clear by telling him down Route 18, past the golf course. He was familiar with that part. And then he sort of got lost. And he said that he knew absolutely nothing about it. He would get back to me Monday. That was 3 weeks ago. He has never called me back.
Yeah.
So I called the attorney. He was the solicitor for CNX Gas and Consul Coal during this operation. And he said he would look into it. Now, he did call me back. And he said he had to do some further investigation of the situation. So, therefore, he was telling me he wasn't making a commitment. And
Now, this whole time you're watching the hillside to make sure nothing's going on?
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Well, I called Cougar Land Services, which is the company that did the mapping.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hire onshore geokinetics, and they're the ones who drill down and put the charges or dynamite, whatever you want to call it, in the ground. Well, when I called Cougar Land Services, the gentleman there, when I told him that CNX said that they have no idea what they're talking about, he said, well, what do you mean? They're the ones paying us for this information.
Yeah.
And I gave him the gentleman's name, the land acquisition gentleman, and he says, well, that's funny. I speak to him on a weekly basis. So obviously, CNX was lying or...
Trying to hide something?
Right. But other than that, I mean, they're not rude when you call.
Well, we called, remember, you gave me some numbers, and I called a Mr.
Can't find Cougar Land Services locally on
No.
the internet or in the phone book.
down in Texas. And I said, I'd like the operator come on. I said, I'd like to speak to Mr. She said, I don't know if he's in or not. She said, can you hold for a second? I said, sure can. And she says, he's in. I'll switch you over to his office. So Mr. says, how did you get this number?
How did you phone me?
I guess he's a wheel with this company. And we directly went to the horse's mouth with this. And 2 days later is when come up here. He was an employee of the drilling company. He's the ones we obtained these maps off of. And I guess Mr. read the riot act on him. He thought that he gave his number out.
Yeah.
And
he wanted to know. He's like, well, how did you get his number?
I says, and he says, hey, boy, he read me out. And I says, well, did you tell him it was me that called? And I said, we found it off the internet. But I said, if you have his home number, I said, you can give me it. I'll call him at home. I said, I'm not bashful. I'll call him at home. And
So-
it was just making a joke,
Yeah,
of
right.
course.
So the younger guy, the one that got in trouble, he was just a representative of
Cougar
of
Land.
Cougar
Yeah,
Land
well, he
Service.
goes up and down the road here 3 times a day.
Really? What's he doing?
I don't have a clue. But he has a brand new pickup truck, and he drives up and down here. As a matter of fact, it was yesterday or the day before he went up, and he had his little mint green vest on, and I recognized him. I was standing in the yard down at the house, and I waved at him, and he waved back at me and went right on up by. But he's several times a day he goes up by here, and where he's going, I have no idea.
And he was nice when he came out.
Yeah, he was.
He spent several hours with us and talked to us and listened to our concerns.
And we
he's-
walked.
Right, we took him down in the field below there to really show him. And then he kind of passed the buck on to the other gentleman at Cougar Land Services. And then he's the gentleman who told me that he said, I'm very, very certain that nothing will happen. He says, we've been doing this for years and years, and I'm fairly certain that absolutely nothing. And he gave me a bunch of numbers and said this is the amount of whatever per inch, and it shouldn't move at all. And he's like, we've done extensive studies, but it's
Right.
just my word against theirs.
Well, didn't he mention something
He
about
didn't.
putting it on an insurance policy?
Oh, he did. Initially he said, well, maybe we can see if we can put you on our insurance, but then that was never mentioned again.
Yeah. Speaking of insurance, we talked about how most of your neighbors, except right here on your street, have signed mineral leases for their lands with. Is it various gas companies or one big one around here?
Chesapeake, I think, was
Chesapeake,
the
yeah.
original.
Dale Properties, they're
Yeah.
a land agent.
Uh-huh.
They were doing work primarily for Chesapeake,
Yeah.
Okay.
but Dale Properties is just a land management company.
Yeah.
They do absolutely no drilling. They just go in and acquire leases and then give them over. They buy them as cheap as they can and sell them as high as they can.
Right.